The B-side. The B-side. Oh, the B-side. The B-side. Yeah.
Hey everybody, this is Nine with the B-side. Welcome to a special edition of our show. We're going to be featuring Nadya Tolokonnikova, who is the lead singer, if you will, but mostly a performance artist and activist for Pussy Riot, and has taken on Vladimir Putin and several other establishments around the world. Some very hard-hitting people, and she's going to talk about how to keep confident in those situations. She's going to take some Q&A from an audience. I want to give a special shout out to the University of Arizona College of Humanities and their dean, Alain-Philippe Durand. Merci beaucoup, monsieur. And please watch this intro by him and learn a little bit more about the festival, which is called Resistance and Revolution, from the University of Arizona. Stay tuned, everybody. Hello, everybody. This is Nine from the B-side. I'm here with Alain-Philippe Durand, and from the College of Humanities at the University of Arizona. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Please tell me about the festival that the College of Humanities is putting on.
Yes, so this is the Tucson Humanities Festival. We are in our 7th edition. We do this every year. This year is so it used to be called the Humanities Week. It was over a week, but this year for the first time we have it over a month. So instead of doing several events every day for a week, we do events spread out throughout the month. So the idea is that to feature the humanities and to go toward the community. So what we are trying to do is to have a mix of events, lectures and performances that are offered on campus but also off campus, like tonight at the Rialto Theatre. And so we have a wide diversity of speakers and performers. Every year we ask our faculty and students to send us suggestions of what the theme should be, because we have a main theme every year. So this year the theme that was chosen back in January was resistance and revolution. So, and then what we do is we ask people in the college to suggest, once we have the theme, we ask them to suggest possible speakers from both the campus and off campus. And then we take a look. I mean, we cannot have everybody because there are always a lot of suggestions, but we make a selection and we do that in the fall semester.
And so this theme was chosen in January.
That's correct.
That seems like before a lot had happened this year.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's the whole thing about the humanities. What we try to do in everything that we do is to show how the humanities, they are really connected to everything. And the idea this year with this theme of resistance and revolution is that you can go the whole way back in history. I mean, we have the theme of resistance and of revolution is something that has happened for way back in history in many different places. And so that's what we are exploring through various cultures, various countries and nations and centuries, but also not just about the whole concept of history itself, but what is revolutionary in what we do in the humanities as well. So, for instance, we have this year we created a new Center for Digital Humanities, and it's the connection between new technologies and how the humanities can be applied through new technology. So one of the events we're going to have as part of the festival is a virtual study abroad. So what we have is members of the Center for Digital Humanities. They equip some of our students and faculty members who are going abroad with some of those special digital cameras, and then they're gonna do a feature about that. Or we also have Dante Loretta, who is the principal investigator for the OSIRIS-REx space mission, who happened to be one of our alumni because one of his degrees was in the College of Humanities in Japanese, in addition to math and science. And his presentation is going to be about how the humanities can be revolutionary the way we approach space studies and space exploration. You know, how his background in the humanities has helped him in his mission as a scientist.
Fantastic. That's quite a broad array of things you can do.
Yes, absolutely.
So if people want to find out more about it, where do they need to go to?
They can go to our website. We have a special website, humanitiesfestival.arizona.edu, or you can follow us on social media, the College of Humanities at the University of Arizona. We are on everything, you know, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and you have the full lineup from today until November 7th.
Excellent. Thank you so much for speaking with me.
Thank you
Hey,
very
everybody,
much.
I will have a link to that, to their website as well on our show. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
You thought that I just made this for the club. No way, I got this microphone to wake you up and say what I can do just.
The thing with this music video, it's still unpublished, so it will come out later. But I just couldn't not show it to you because it's dedicated to current political situation, and I wanted to give you a glimpse of what's going on with us right now. So we're still doing lots of music videos, and we just shoot guerrilla style music video in Moscow, and it will come out in November. When I was 14 years old, I showed up at local newspaper's office with a piece I had written on pollution and climate change. They told me that I was a really nice little girl and not a bad writer, but wouldn't I rather write about the zoo? The piece on catastrophic pollution in my hometown wasn't published. Oh well, many things have happened in my life since then, including my arrest and 2 years I spent in jail, but in fact nothing has seriously changed. I keep asking uncomfortable questions. These questions, while not always accompanied by answers, have always led me to action. It seemed to me that I have been doing actions all my life. We began reclaiming public space and engaging in political protest a long time ago, in 2007, when all of us were 17 and 18 years old. I'm 27 now. Pussy Riot was founded in October 2011, but it was preceded by 5 years of research in the genre of actionism. 5 years of schooling in how to escape from cops, make art without money, hop over the fence and be bold. I was born a few days before the fall of the Berlin Wall. The thought at the time was that after the elimination of the socialism and capitalism contradiction, we were going to live in peace. What we've seen, in fact, is a cosmic rise of inequality, the global empowerment of oligarchs, threats to public education and healthcare, plus a potentially fatal environmental crisis. And all of that causes radical distrust in mainstream politics. These dissatisfactions are now being used by right-wing, nativist, opportunist, corrupted, cynical, oligarchic elites. The same ones who helped create and stoke all of this now offer salvation. That's their game. That's the same strategy as defunding the program or regulatory agency they want to get rid of, then holding up its resulting effectiveness as evidence it needs to be folded. When Trump came along, Trump, I don't even like to pronounce his name. I'm just like, denial. Like, I don't believe that Trump was president of America, and I don't believe that Putin is president of Russia, because I don't think that they really represent our countries. Thank you. When Trump won presidential election, people were deeply shocked, and it's understandable. But what was in fact blown up on 8th of November 2016 was the social contract, the paradigm that says that you can live comfortably without making your hands dirty with politics. The belief that it only takes you one vote every 4 years and you have your freedoms protected. This belief was torn into pieces. The belief that institutions are here to protect us and take care of us, and we don't need to bother ourselves with protecting these institutions from being eroded by corruption, lobbyists, monopolies, corporate and government control over our personal data. We are outsourcing political struggle. We've been doing it for a long time, like we were outsourcing low-wage labor and wars, like proxy wars. If nationalist aggression, closed borders, exceptionalism of any kind really worked for society, North Korea would be the most prosperous country on earth. These have never really worked, but we keep buying it. That's how we got Trump, Brexit, race of nationalism in France and Germany, and Orban in Hungary, and Putin in Russia. President Putin is playing these games too. He exploits the complex of rage, pain, and impoverishment of the Russian people caused by shock economy, privatization, and deregulation that took place in the 90s. I may not be president or congressman, I don't have lots of money or power, but I will use my voice to humbly say that looking back at the 20th century, I find nationalism and exceptionalism really creepy. It's about time, thank you. It's about time to quit behaving like we are supposed to be the last species on Earth. Sometimes you just need to do more and say less, or like when you're witnessing the dramatic rise of right-wing populism, aggression, bigotry, misogyny, and racism. The future, unfortunately, has never promised us to be bright or progressive or whatever. Things may get worse. They have been getting worse in my country since 2012, the year when Pussy Riot were put behind the bars and Putin became president for the third time. The struggle's failures are not good reason for me to stop our activism, though. Yes, social and political shifts don't work in linear ways. Sometimes you have to work for years for the smallest result. But sometimes, on the contrary, mountains can be turned upside down in a second. You never really know. I prefer to keep trying to achieve progressive changes humbly but persistently. There are lots of talks about Russia nowadays, but not many know how Russia really feels and smells like. It's crucial to me to make this distinguish between Russia and my so-called president. It hurts to hear Trump is meddling with Russia. No, he has deals with Putin and his government and his friends oligarchs, but not with Russia, because Russia is a dangerously beautiful country full of really creative and mind-blowing and dedicated, hard-working people, and they're not represented by Vladimir Putin. It's different. It's just our kleptocratic government. Many wonder, what is that to live under rule of misogynist authoritarian with almost absolute power? So I guess I'm here to give a short glimpse into that. But we can talk about it later. And now I want to say to you that we are more than just atoms, separated and frightened by TV and mutual distrust, hidden in the cells of our houses and iPhones. We don't want to live in a world where everything is for sale and nothing is for public good. We despise this very cynical approach and we are ready to fight back. More than that, we are not just resisting, we're proactive. We live according to our values right now. When I try to find words to talk about more, when I try to find words to identify these words, to talk about a more holistic approach to world politics. When I suggest thinking about the future of the whole planet rather than ambitions of wealth and nations, I inevitably start to sound naive and utopian to many people. I thought for a while that it was because of my poor personal communication skills, and maybe that's part of the problem. But I see this failure of words as a symptom for something larger. We've never developed the language to discuss the well-being of Earth as the whole system. We identify people of where they are from, while never learning how to talk about people as part of larger human species. We talk about countries, we talk about race, we talk about politics, they relate to some, not all. Just use actual human language. It's simple. Healthcare, education, access to free of censorship information. Stop spending our resources on drones, ICBMs, and excessively voyeuristic intelligence services. Pay people who work. Workers are not slaves. And all these are rights and not privileges. All this is achievable. Change is much more doable than we've been taught to think. If you have to point out an enemy, our greatest enemy is apathy. We will be able to achieve fantastic results if we were not trapped in the idea that nothing can be changed. What we're lacking is confidence that these institutions can actually work better, and we can make them work better. People don't believe in enormous power that they have, but for some reason don't use. If everyone who wrote a Twitter post against Trump showed up on the street and refused to leave until he left, Trump would be out of office in a week. The powerless do have power. Václav Havel, an artist and writer, spent 5 years in the Soviet prison camp as punishment for his political views. And later, after the fall of USSR, he became president of Czechoslovakia. Havel wrote a brilliant inspirational piece called The Power of the Powerless in 1978. The essay came into my life miraculously. After I received my 2-year sentence, I was transported to one of the harshest labor camps in Russia, Mordovia region. After only 4 weeks of highly traumatic labor in the camp, when I still had more than 1 year and a half of my sentence in front of me, I became lifeless and apathetic. My spirit was broken, and I was obedient because of endless abuse, trauma, and psychological pressure. I thought, what I can do against this totalitarian machine, isolated from all my friends and comrades, helplessly alone, with no chance of getting out of here anytime soon. I'm in the hands of these people who run the prison, who are basically my masters, and I'm their slave. And they're not held accountable for injuries and even death of prisoners. They literally own us. We're disposable, somnambulistic shadows of what left of human beings. But I'm a lucky woman, because I found the power of powerless. I read it, hiding it from the prison officers. Then tears of joy, and then tears brought my confidence back. We're not broken until we allow ourselves to be broken. Tears brought my courage back. Havel wrote, part of the essence of the post-totalitarian system is that it draws everyone into its sphere of power. Not so they may realize themselves as human beings, but so they may surrender their human identity in favor of the identity of the system. That is, so they may become agents of the system's general automatism and servants of its self-determined goals. So they may learn to be comfortable with their involvement, to identify with it as though it were something natural and inevitable, and ultimately, so they may come to treat any non-involvement as as arrogance, as an attack on themselves. as a form of dropping out the society. By pulling everyone into its power structure, the post-totalitarian system makes everyone an instrument of mutual totality, the outer totality of society. So please add to your checklist. Remember to turn on your confidence. You do have power. Together, as a community or movement, we can and will make miracles. Thank you.
Now, so Nadya, you know, I have a question to maybe start us off about your relationship to art and politics. So for you, can you talk a little bit about how politics informs your artwork and how that has transitioned over the past, like, let's say 10 years?
I never really separated those issues. So every time when I hear this question, I'm like, when did we start to separate art and politics? Because art is a thing that is supposed to reflect times. Like good artists is thinking and they're trying to smell the time and they reflect it in work of art and hopefully represent somebody else besides him or her. And plus, I'm the girl from the beginning of the 20th century, and I'm the girl from Russian avant-garde, and so for them, art and politics was always connected. And my teen crush was Vladimir Mayakovsky, and that's why like all boys, they had troubles because nobody can really compare with him. They didn't, and that he did time in jail, so that's why I always had this strange thing for people who spend time in jail for their beliefs, and
that's why you went and wanted to sing that song in the church, yeah.
I didn't expect to be in prison actually, but it was a good thing in terms of like gender issues, because normally it is a man who is going to prison and there is someone who is following him, and it's normally a woman, right? And this woman is not known, though she's usually a equal partner, but nobody gives a flying fuck about her just because she's a woman. And I was in that situation for a couple of times when my partner Peter, he ended up being arrested for just 10 days or something. So I would go to rally and I would present it like, oh, here is a wife of Peter Verzilov. And like, what? I'm about to talk about feminism. That's so strange. So then I ended up in prison and everybody would call Peter my husband. And I was like, yes! Yeah. And he's still trying to get rid of that. We're not even together anymore, but he's still known as my husband. So, I mean, art and politics, they're both essential to me, and I could never really select one thing for myself. I tried. I thought at some point when I was released, and I thought that we have big voice and we're supposed to be really important and serious people right now, and I shouldn't say the word fuck or something like that. So I was trying to do that for half of a year, and then I ended up in major depression. And then I was like, no, I don't want. I think, there are some creatures that just are not supposed to separate art and politics, I guess.
Right, yeah. That's interesting because the tradition, you kind of allude to this, the Decemberist wives, Sonia Marmeladova from Dostoevsky. There's a long tradition of women following men into bondage, but here you have kind of the flip reverse. And that brings us to maybe a bigger question about the Russian artist. Always in dissonance with the state. Like if you think back to Radisha, to Pushkin, Chernyshevsky, into the contemporary moment with Serebrennikov and what's happening in the Gogol Theater, the Gogol Center, do you think that there is something specific about Russia and the relationship between the artist and the state? Or is it universal, but maybe you can speak to this on your own experience?
I think it is pretty much universal, because how can you like big institutions as the state if you're an artist? Because you're all about freedom of individual, and the state is working in opposite ways. And it will always work in that way. I mean, that's our job, to keep pressure and make them accountable, because even the best government they will turn into assholes if we will not hold them accountable. So I think that's a universal thing. But, you know, we have this tradition of intelligentsia in Russia, so, and artists, most of artists, they are coming from that social background, and they normally have this feeling of shame and feeling of duty that I'm kind of it's something like, you know, seen in Christianity, that they feel that they are above normal, regular people, like workers, but they still want to be with them. But still, they're trying always to connect with them somehow. They're trying to go back to narodniki. I don't know how you call them here. I don't know. But anyway, so there is since I think since Peter the Great, we do have this tradition of intelligentsia that gives raise to all those people who are traumatized by this feeling that they're not connected enough.
Do you think, given your perspective as a public intellectual, as an artist, as somebody who has got her fingers to the pulse of kind of a lot of places, that there is something that Americans need to hear about the Russian experience that will help us in this moment to gather strength, to kind of make a grassroots movement where we can communicate with one another and share our experiences to go forward?
I think luckily the situation is pretty different, so I don't want to be one of those who are making really easy and tasty and sexy comparisons between Putin and Trump. The nature of their power is pretty different. One is celebrity, another one was appointed by Russian oligarchs. Just, you know, he was appointed because they thought that he will be an easy, governable man from KGB. But thinking about similarities, I would say what I learned from my pretty intimate life with Vladimir Putin, that it's really important to keep remembering your agenda, because it's really, you know, the terrible stuff are being normalized. Even in America, not just in Russia, but even in America, even before the elections, when Trump was saying all those terrible words like fat pigs, and he was
Pussy.
he was like, I like to say pussy, but not in context that Trump used it. And so basically he normalized bullying people who are different from you, based on religion and race, and that was huge. So it's really important not to just be super stubborn and think about your agenda, and don't try to change your language according to what's going on. Because as I said about those two strange people, Trump and Putin, I'm in denial. I'm trying to live in my own world according to my own values right now, as no other world is possible, and as it is possible right now. And in order to maintain this feeling that other world is possible, you need to build alternative institutions. And that's what we learned, because if you're trying to work with existing institutions like existent media, you will all the time be a fool in the end of the story, because you try to write an article, like I did when I was 14 years old. I came to this newspaper, they're like, yeah, I want to write an article, and I know why it's polluted because of all these factories, and they don't give a fuck about pollution. And they were like, no, we can't publish it, you know, I understand why. Just create your own local media outlets, and the same thing with organizations that can help people. Like this, the way how we can win over people's minds and hearts, if you provide them understanding that you as an activist who's sharing this and this and these values can really help you somehow. I don't know, provide healthcare when government is failing to do so, provide education when government is failing to do it, and American system based on huge student debt just doesn't make really sense to me. So I think any organization which would provide free education would be really valuable here. So that's, I guess, my advice. And dream, but not what they call American dream, I guess, but dream politically. Because I feel like when Soviet Union fell apart, a lot of people were trapped in this really strange thing, like end of history of Francis Fukuyama, and they believed that, oh yeah, we've reached something, we're living in capitalism, and it has to bring us to the bright future. But unfortunately it didn't, so we still need to look for alternatives. It shouldn't be communism like it was in USSR, but it should be something else. And we just need to start to dream politically and use our political imagination.
That I think is probably something that every activist has to deal with too, is how do you stay inspired? How do you stay resilient when you're faced by oppression? How do you take care of yourself, your mind, your body, in the face of oppression?
That's actually the biggest challenge and the biggest art, and it's a really good question. I mean, that's a really good question that I'm asking myself every day, because one answer is take a look back at history. Historic figures like Emmanuel Pankhurst were force-fed, and when she was in jail. And when you are actually in jail and when you are about to be force-fed, you're like, oh yeah, but there were some people before me and they were human beings as me and they were facing all these things too, but they survived and they achieved something. So that stuff, I guess. And prison officials, by the way, they know it very well, so they prevented me from reading all this stuff like memoirs of historic activists. They just banned me from reading that, and they gave me a Bible. I was like, cool, but Jesus Christ is revolutionary. So, I mean, he was okay.
Yeah.
He was okay. And I was reading Bible for 5 months in a row because they didn't give me anything else. And I was convicted of hooliganism incited with religious hatred. So I was supposed to hate Bible, so I ended up just learning by heart the Bible. So now I think I can slam with any Republican over the Bible. I don't think they really read it. I mean, I would say that they're educating people like through Pussy Riot. Lots of people in Russia would say like, oh, Pussy Riot is bullshit, it's nothing. And like, we may be bullshit, yeah, that's true. But we kind of play guitar. At least we introduced the feminist discourse and LGBTQ discourse into Russian public opinion. And before, I remember even my friends who were super progressive, they were like, can you not talk about LGBTQ issues here on the stage, on this rally, because you will scare people. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, but after we will win, let's say we'll win, and then we'll have a revolution, then after that we'll have what Egypt had after Tahrir Square. I mean, you have to talk about progressive issues right now, you cannot really wait. So, we did something.
You mentioned revolution, and that also brings up the centennial of the Bolshevik Revolution. And I was thinking if you could talk about what, there's two kind of different ways of thinking about it, at least it seems to me in Russia. One is to kind of ignore it, like it was like, oops, that happened. That it was a step back, that it removed Russia from the train kind of Western civilization, and that it removed the kind of elements of civilization that traditionally Russians kind of would applaud. And the second is to note it as kind of something that happened because of the institutional makeup and the dissonance between the different systems in Russia. For you as an activist, how do you reflect upon that, the Bolshevik Revolution? You mentioned Mayakovsky as somebody who is a muse and also a boo, but Do you think about that particular moment right now, where we are in this kind of nationalist rhetoric that we hear constantly too?
That's another tricky question. Russia is full of tricky questions. So I would say I admire energy and impulse that brought people to revolution of 1917. And I think Russian avant-garde, Russian poetry at the beginning of 20th century, and Russian philosophy, it wouldn't be that great as it is right now. And I'm a little bit Russian exceptionist here. It is really great. I'm sorry, but so it is inspired by their political ideals. But then I kind of support really what happened after 1917. So, but you know, I think it's still crucial part of the world political process, because if you think about other countries and the way how Russian Revolution and communism in Russia affected other countries, like it created all social, the whole notion of social democracy, basically, that you're fighting for here with Bernie Sanders. So it would never happen without Dutch Revolution of 1917. So it was really uneasy for us, and I kind of supported it because it basically destroyed all Russian humanitarian disciplines. It destroyed literature, it destroyed philosophy, and I adore Russian philosophy before 1917. When they were trying to find ways how to reintroduce political ideas, religious ideas, and communist ideas, and how bring them all together in one melting pot. If it would happen, if it would, they find a way how to just more peacefully. But I guess the impulse was amazing.
So revolution also brings us back to the Václav Havel quote from your talk, and power of the powerless. And there's a question here about Havel's piece and what it meant to you. So can you talk more about your prison experience before and after that essay, and how the essay transformed your life?
Prison experience consists of two major things. First one is pre-trial detention, when you're more or less sitting in one cell and reading Bible. But it's not that bad because you don't have to work. But then you're transported after your sentence, you're transported to prison camp. And that's where my problems started, because you have to be involved in useless activity all the time. So you're bringing bricks from one side of penal colony to another. You know, I guess the closest reference is army. And a lot of really absurd activity, which is not, you don't really need to have. So I was really depressed because of all of that, because I like to read, I like to think, I like to write, and you don't have time to do all of that, and it's all was doing intentionally, because they basically need to leave, disconnect your mind from your body again, and you need to leave just your body, because it's really easy to govern then, and they did it. But then I opened this magazine and read Václav Havel essay, and basically, the reason why it was so important, because it was telling about that apathy and automatical mode, when you don't question anymore why you are a part of the system, where you're turning into yes man, and it is so easy when everything tells you to do so, but you just need to. Even when you just say no once, you're basically ruining the whole system, because you're showing the emperor is naked. And when you understand this, the power of this just one no, and importance of this one no, then you have this goosebumps, and you just, yes, I'll do it, and you're doing it.
Wonderful.
So yeah, I ended up. not just me, like, another person from Pussy Riot, Masha Alekhina, she was my big inspiration when I was in prison because she started all these prison riots. And she was in another region, so I heard of her and I was like, oh, no, I mean, there's just like, there is a way how to resist the system, even when you are in totalitarian island. And prison is totalitarian island in authoritarian country. We ended up doing a hunger strike. We did a hunger strike because all people around us had to work for 16 hours a day, and without any day offs, and even one day off. You have one day off a month. You cannot sleep during that day off. You have to listen to radio station, and radio station is telling you about prison rules. It's a local radio station. It's just one over and over. They're saying to you that you have to be obedient and blah 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 blah. It's unbelievable. So yeah, we ended up doing a hunger strike, and we achieved some things. But you know, in order to make big prison reform, you really need your government to be on the board with you, and our government is not on the board with us, unfortunately. I believe that when Navalny will be president, we may not agree on some issues, but definitely we do agree on prison issue. Partly because his brother is in jail right now. So our government is so shitty, they didn't put Navalny himself in prison because they're scared. They tried to do it once, but people just showed up on the streets, and the next day they had to let him go. But instead of that, they put his brother in jail, and he's in jail for 3 years for nothing, just for having a brother who is politically active. So yeah, I mean, if Navalny will be president, I'm sure it's possible, because it's not like it's something that, it's not a nuclear science. It's like all understandable what to do. You need to replace those people who work right now in prison system, who don't care about prisoners, who are part of tradition that think that you need to oppress human being. You need to replace them with people who really want to bring people back to society. And that's the goal of prison, because you're not trying to kill people, you're not trying to oppress people, you're trying to change their mind, and you're trying to put trust in their hearts and minds in society. Because a lot of those people who ended up in jail, they're just broken people who were rejected by society and they couldn't find their place. So most of them can be changed, and it's not what's happening in prisons right now in Russia or in America. And but it's happened somewhere. We were traveling in Scandinavia and in Germany. We were visiting prisons there, and we spoke with those prisoners, and they really trust their prison officials. It is possible, it's doable. We were in Latvia, and it's interesting to see Soviet countries, because you see how dramatically they're changing, and they're trying to change it super fast to be a European country, and they're doing it really. And it's not like, it's just, we're 20 years, right? And they replaced all Soviet prisons. I mean, we're sending people to Mars. We're making all these things, and we're pretending that we cannot improve prison system. That's strange. So of course it's doable.
So maybe one of the final questions that we would have is, where do you see Pussy Riot going in the future? What are your next projects?
Yeah. We don't have big plans. We just keep imagining things. Plus, you know, I'm not in charge of all Pussy Riot, because anybody can be Pussy Riot. I can speak just for me and my Pussy Riot community, and we have lots of them. We are about to release new music videos, and I learned how to direct music videos by myself. What else? We are launching immersive theater based on Pussy Riot's story. It will happen in London, Hopefully we will bring it later to United States too.
To Tucson.
To Tucson, yeah. So that's immersive theater is when actors are interacting with you all the time, and you're in a small group, like 10 people, and so you will go through Cathedral of Christ the Savior, you will take part in Pussy Riot performance, then you will be arrested, unfortunately, and put in prison. And then you will get to know about prison conditions. And that's all, I consider it as part of our prison reform initiative. Because again, for people here who are sitting here, it's really easy to just close their eyes on what's going on in prisons, because there are a lot of terrible things that are going on even in our free world. But still, you may end up in prison just accidentally. You cannot forget about those people. You will find yourself in not the right time, in not the right place, and you will end up in prison. And terms in America are huge. Another thing, and we are making our live shows finally, because we were making only illegal concerts all the time, and now finally, because people keep asking me, like, can you perform something like on the stage? And I'm like, oh, I'm not sure, I don't know, I'm not a musician, I'm a performance artist. So finally we decided to give some fun to the people who are our supporters and who want to listen to it, so we want to make a live show.
Well, Nadya, I want to thank you so much for coming to Tucson, for sharing your wisdom, for being so open with your experience, and we wish you luck. And I'd also like to thank College of Humanities and the Humanities Festival for bringing this important speaker to Tucson.
Thank you!